Welcome along to the online Dublin Buddhist Centre. So my name's Nyanadara, and I'm going to be teaching the course over the next 8 weeks. And also, I was just chatting to Kevin there. So Kevin's going to be with us too. He is our tech support person. Maybe, Kevin, maybe you could just spotlight yourself and say hi for a second. He doesn't know. I didn't ask him to do this. So I've slightly ambushed him.
Yeah, one sec.
Oh, hang on. Where you go, Kev? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having trouble. Something's happened to my computer, and I'm just having trouble sorting it. Okay, I'll just have to speak without the.
Well, I can see you fine.
Oh, right. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So yes, I'm Kevin, and I'm the manager of the Dublin Buddhist Centre, and I'll be just kind of doing some of the tech on this course. So any sort of technical questions, you can get in touch with me either in chat, or you can also during the week, if you have any questions, you can just email manager@dublinbuddhistcentre.org. So hopefully there won't be any issues, and that it all goes very smoothly, a bit more smoothly than me trying to spotlight myself. That's me. So
Cool. Thanks, Kevin, and sorry for ambushing you with that.
it's okay, no worries.
I can't promise it won't be the last time. Okay. So that's Kevin. So we're your kind of team. There's also a team of, there's about 14 of us, experienced Buddhists who are also part of the team for the course. So you'll get to meet them in due course. So what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to give you an introduction to the course and what we're going to be doing. And then we'll have breakout rooms. So breakout rooms will be a feature of the course each night. And you'll be in the same breakout room with the same people each evening. So you'll hear more about that when we get there. And then we'll have a break. So every evening we'll have a break for about 10 minutes just to give our eyes a rest from looking at the screen. And we can grab a cup of tea or do what we need to do just to refresh ourselves. And after the break tonight, we're going to meditate for a short while. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about our theme for this week. So each week, the course is about the Noble Eightfold Path. It's called Vision and Transformation. And every week, we'll be looking at a particular aspect of the Eightfold Path. So we've got 8 weeks and we've got 8 limbs of the Eightfold Path. And just before we finish in the evening, I'll go over what the home practice is for the course. So the course will have a home practice element, which is quite important. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. So I wanted to say just a few things about Zoom, about being on Zoom. So probably most of you are familiar with Zoom by now. If you've not been on it all that much, or you've not done a course like this one on it, basically you've got 2 views. You've got gallery view, which is when you see everybody on the course. And you've got speaker view, which is where you just see the person who's talking. So most of the time that's going to be me. So you can choose which view you want to look at. And if you are all of you are at home. I was going to say if you're at home, but when you're at home, and it is nice to be able to see who I'm talking to. So it is nice if you turn your camera on. You might not want to, and that's up to you. But it is nice to actually to be able to see everybody and to get a bit of a sense of you when I'm talking to you. So do turn your camera on if you are happy to do that. And if you're on a phone, you swipe left or right to get the different views, or a smaller screen, touch screen device. And this is quite an important thing. If your connection is failing a little bit, if you've got bandwidth problems and the sound is breaking up maybe, if you turn your own video off, that will mean that it'll become a bit clearer. So that's one sort of first port of call if you're having difficulty connecting with the caller in any way. And if as sometimes happens with Zoom, there might be a problem with Zoom itself and everybody gets chucked out of the call. That's not been known to happen. If that happens and you can't rejoin, just look at your email. We'll send you an email and we'll let you know what the story is. So just check your email if that happens. Okay, so I wanted to say a little bit about the context, if you like, for the course. So Buddhism, of course, started with the Buddha, and the Buddha became the Buddha, the awakened one, when he meditated beneath a tree in northeastern India 2,500 years ago. And there's lots of different ways that state of enlightenment is described. It's sometimes described or talked about as a state of peace or wholeness, in a way that the Buddha was complete in and of himself. He didn't need anything external to himself to be whole. He was complete within himself, whole and complete. And with that comes a sense of peace. It's sometimes spoken about more commonly as a state of wisdom and compassion. And that compassion, the Buddha's compassion, most strikingly manifested in his communication. So he communicated with people, he communicated a particular perspective on life, a vision of life. And that was the way that he helped people to grow and develop, to move away from states of suffering. So who did he talk to? Who are the people he talked to? So according to the tradition, after he woke up, after he became the awakened one, he was thinking, reflecting on, well, who would he communicate his teaching to? And immediately what he thought of was some of his teachers, but two teachers of his in particular, who'd helped him on his journey towards awakening. And he thought of them first, but he realized that both of them had passed away. So it seems that the Buddha had kind of supernormal powers. He could kind of see things that other people couldn't see. So he found that they weren't living anymore. So what he then thought of were 5 friends of his, 5 ascetics. There were these people who lived in a very kind of extreme way, particularly kind of suppressing bodily needs, bodily desires, because they thought that would liberate them. And he practiced with these 5 men, and they were friends of his. And eventually he realized that that wasn't the way to live, and he went off on his own. But these friends were the first people that he made contact with after his awakening, the first people that he sought out, at least. And he communicated with them, and in a place called Sarnath, which is not too far from Varanasi, again in northeastern India. And often when you see accounts of what took place at that meeting, accounts of the communication that took place, it's talked about as the first sermon, so the Buddha's first sermon. So when you think of a sermon, you think of a religious teacher kind of standing probably in a pulpit, kind of delivering a speech. That's the kind of sense that you get. But really, it's much more likely, if you read around other ancient Buddhist texts, that what happened was much more of the nature of a conversation, a discussion even, that the Buddha had a particular perspective on life, and these other 5 individuals had their perspective on life, and they communicated, they talked about their different perspectives, they got into discussion. And one by one, according to the tradition, those 5 individuals, they saw things the way that the Buddha saw them. They woke up to that vision of the truth that the Buddha had woken up to, and they themselves became awakened. So I'll say more about what the Buddha talked about on that occasion, but I wanted to mention that because in a way that's what I'd like for this course. Now, we don't live in ancient India 2,500 years ago. We live all over the place, actually. Most of us live in Ireland for the moment anyway. And we're also communicating through electronic devices. But that sort of same conversation, I think, will take place on this course. That's what I'd like to happen, is that we've all got our own perspectives. We've all got values that we hold dear. And it's a matter of actually bringing them into dialogue with each other so that we can each hear from other people and see what their perspective is. So there'll be opportunities for discussion, for conversation, and for questions and answers and inquiry. So with that in mind, like I was saying earlier, we're going to have breakout rooms. So this is where how many of us in the room are there now? There's 86 of us. We'll all break into little groups of about 6 or 7, and yeah, we'll just have an opportunity to get to know a few of the other people on the course in a little bit more depth, and also have an opportunity to talk about some of the things that we've been hearing about and some of the things that we've been practicing. And it'll be the same people each week. So the idea is that you get you kind of build up a sense of the other people. You develop a sort of a sense of community even. And as I was saying earlier, one of the people in the group will be someone with more experience of Buddhism. So there'll be a team member who will, just kind of keep things moving, provide perspectives and so on. So you'll be able to see those people because they'll have the word team before their name if you look on your screen. Probably most of them will be on the first of the 4 screens. So that's the breakout rooms. More about them in a moment when we get to them. And with this course, the emphasis really is on home practice. Most of the course is going to happen in the rest of the week, not on Tuesday night, but in the rest of the rest of the week. And what these sessions are about, the Tuesday night sessions, will be about setting intentions based on what we've heard, based on what we've learned about the Eightfold Path. And the following week, we're going to review how we got on. We're just going to look back and see what we learned, what challenges we encountered. We might have questions coming out of the practice that we did. So it's going to be like that. It's going to be setting intentions for the week and then hearing a bit more, looking back at what we did, and then going forward into the next week with some different things to try out, some different perspectives and so on. So with that in mind, you might like to get a journal. Some people really like to write their thoughts down. It's a way of making what you're thinking about more conscious and providing a kind of a sense of reflection, a way to reflect. Something about externalizing your thoughts helps you to get some perspective on them, helps you even to evaluate whether they're true or not. So you might like to get a journal, and you could write your intentions in your journal. You could write your kind of evaluate your intentions, how you got on with them and so on. And you could just keep it handy. I know a friend of mine, he's got a little Muji pocket notebook he just keeps in his pocket all the time. He just notes things down during the course of his day, both kind of practical things like, I need to get milk and bread, to, thoughts about life even. So you might like to get a journal. Now, you might have noticed that we're recording these sessions, or we're recording this session. And so that the whole of the class will be recorded, and we'll make those recordings available to you. They'll probably be available sometime on Wednesday afternoon or in the early evening. And what that means is you can, if you miss a session, you can catch up on something that you missed. If you want to follow the lead meditation that I'm going to be doing each evening, you can also do that. There'll be a timestamp list underneath the video, and you can click on the appropriate timestamp and listen to the video, watch the video again. And just to say that it's only going to be me who's going to be videoed. So none of the rest of you's videos will be on that video, just in case you're concerned about that. It'll be all, no one's going to be kind of exposed, so to speak, on YouTube. And we'll send you an email each Wednesday, which will have the link to the video and the lead meditation. It'll have a reminder of what the home practice is, and there might be other material that will feed into those emails as we go through the weeks if particular things come up that you might like to look at. We'll also send you a reminder before each session of the link, of the Zoom link. So just keep an eye on your email. And I mentioned in the email that we sent out to you a few days ago, or you might have just received it in the last couple of days if you've just booked on more recently, is the book. So this course is based on a series of talks, a series of Dharma talks that were given in the late 1960s in London by a man called Sangharakshita. And those talks, those Dharma talks, have been edited into a book. It's called the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. And basically, this course is based on those talks. The kind of the approach that we take into the Eightfold Path is based on those talks. And I'd really recommend you get the book because the book will have more information than what I'm going to be able to give you each evening. And also it will provide you with more context. It's really, really accessible material, but it's also really deep material. It goes right to some of the central issues of, human life, and also the Dharma life, the Buddhist spiritual life. So I'd really recommend the book. And just to say as well, the book is published by Windhorse Publications, which is the kind of publishing wing of our Buddhist community, of the Triratna Buddhist community. And I contacted the director of Windhorse Publication, who is a friend of mine, and she's basically given us a 15% discount for the course. So you get the book for slightly cheaper. That's just for people doing this course. And there's a code that you need to use, which is on the email we sent you. And also, just to say, if you set up you can set up an account with Windhorse Publications, and if you do that, you get an extra 10% off. The book works out at about $18.50 for both the e-book version is slightly cheaper than the paper version, and you can actually read the first chapter on the website if you want to have a little bit of a sense of what it's about. But I'd really recommend that. It'll in a way it's kind of essential, because I'm not going to be giving you a whole lot of notes for each of the evenings like I have on previous courses. So really the book is the notes for the course, and like I said, I'll be following the approach fairly closely, so it'll be very much in keeping with the kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about and the way that I'm going to be talking about them. So so that's the book. And then, just I'll say a little bit more about what the Buddha talked about with his friends on that occasion 2,500 years ago. But just before I mention that, I wanted to say that we're running this course. In fact, we're running all of our events at the moment for free. So we're a charity. We're a charity that is here just to provide an opportunity for people to hear about the Buddha's teaching and to practice the Buddha's teaching. So that's basically what we're about as a charity. We're not trying to make a profit. And we just want people, to access what we're doing. And since the lockdown started back in March of last year, we basically decided that we wanted to just do everything for free. So all of our courses are free. We're not charging for anything. And what that means is it makes it much more available to anybody who wants to participate anywhere. So anybody anywhere in the world can come to our Buddha Center, which is brilliant. And but there are still, obviously, it costs money to have a Buddha Center, even an online one. We need people to run it and so on. So we still do need money. So we'll just basically ask you for a donation for the course. I'll say a little bit more about that later on, but I just wanted to say that from the outset, that there's no charge for the course, but we are asking you to consider making a donation so we can keep going with our work and allow more and more people to participate in what we're offering here. So, what did the Buddha talk about with his friends? So I mentioned how the Buddha woke up, the Buddha became the Buddha. He wasn't always called the Buddha. The Buddha is like a title, which expresses in a way his inner realization. So what did the Buddha talk about with his 5 friends, his 5 former companions? How did he express his vision of the truth? So according to the text, that there's an ancient text called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which means something like the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma. And according to that text, he communicated 4 truths. So it's as if the Buddha was saying, these 4 things are true about life. That was a kind of basic message that he communicated to his friends. No doubt they had a lot of toing and froing, but that was the basic sort of gist of what he was saying. So the first of those truths is the truth of suffering. So basically the Buddha is saying that if you're a human being, there's an unavoidable element of our lives which is painful. And that's just true. It's just a fact of our lives. So he talked about it as having different kind of manifestations. So firstly, he just says, well, having a body is painful. If you experience pain through the pleasure through the body, you also experience pain. Whether it's a headache or whether it's an injury or whether it's a disease, there's just going to be an inevitable element of pain through the body. And there's also all kinds of other aspects which are a little bit more maybe complex, a bit more psychological. For example, grief. If we lose something which we like or love, or we lose someone that we like or love, we experience grief, we experience suffering. If something happens that we come into contact with that we don't like, we experience grief as well. So there's that side of things as well. So for many of us, at the moment, just this whole fact of living in a pandemic is a kind of this kind of suffering. It's just undeniable awkwardness, tension, hassle, tension maybe with other people that arises because our lives are curtailed in terms of the freedoms that we usually enjoy. But there's a sort of a deeper level of suffering, and in a way that points to the fact that as human beings, we kind of know that there's more to life than what we're currently experiencing. We have this deep sense of dis-ease, this deep sense of not rightness about things. And we have a sense that there must be more to life than this. It's something about just being tangled up being in a particular place with a particular character that just feels constricting. It sort of feels like we're locked into something that we can't break out of. So it's a much deeper kind of, you might say, existential kind of suffering. And the Buddha also says that is true, that's just a truth about our lives as human beings. And that leads us to do a lot of the things we do to try and resolve that in a sense of conflict and tension. That might be why a number of us are actually on this course this evening. So that's the first truth, the truth that there is suffering in life. Maybe one thing I'll add is that the Buddha didn't say that life is suffering. Sometimes people say the Buddha says that life is suffering. And I think that's going a little bit far, really, because obviously there's pleasure in life as well. There's friendship and there's good food and there's, sunshine and there's spring. And there's so many delightful things in life. So the Buddha's not saying that life is just suffering, but he is saying that there is this unavoidable experience of suffering and it bothers us deeply. And the Buddha says, so this is the second truth now, that there is a cause of that suffering. So basically the Buddha says that the cause of suffering is not something external to us. It's actually a mental state. He says the cause of suffering is craving. So at the time, and even now, that's quite a radical thing. He's sort of saying that that suffering is caused ultimately by our mind, by a mental state, by an emotional state, by a way of seeing, by an attitude that we have. So what that means is that we ourselves can remove that cause. We can remove the cause of suffering through our own endeavors. And that's very, very central to Buddhism, that kind of perspective, that we ourselves can free ourselves, because the cause of suffering ultimately is in the mind. So that's just the truth of the cause of suffering. Briefly, there's a lot more that one could say about that, and we will hear more about that as we go on through the course. The third truth is the truth of the ending of suffering. So the Buddha is basically saying that if you remove the cause, then the thing that cause has given rise to will come to an end. So suffering can cease, suffering can end. So what that means positively is awakening. So that's the state that the Buddha himself attained, a state of a human state that is free from suffering. So again, that in a way is quite a radical kind of thing to say, that it's possible to be a human being who lives free from suffering. So that was the third truth. And in a way, the Buddha embodied that. He didn't probably need to talk about it all that much because it was self-evident. The people that were talking to him could see there was something about him. They could see that he was free from tension and worry and anxiety and so on, that he was free from fear, that he was liberated from suffering. So that was the third truth. And the fourth truth is the truth of the path. So the Buddha said there's a way from moving from suffering to freedom from suffering, from ignorance to wisdom, from incarceration, bondage to freedom. And that's the Noble Eightfold Path. And I find that a very useful way of thinking about Buddhism. People often ask, what is Buddhism? Particularly if you work in a Buddhist center, you get asked this question a lot. And people often say, is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? Or is it a way of life? People often ask that. And in a way, it sort of, in a way, has elements of those three. In a way, in some ways, it's a religion, although it's not a religion with a creator God, which makes it a bit unusual. It's got elements of philosophy. There are teachings, there are ways of looking at things, but it's not saying that reality can be captured in a particular set of words. And in a way, it's a way of life, but it can't just be reduced to a way of life. But what you can say about Buddhism is that it's a path. Yeah. And it's precisely that path that we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks. So these are the truths that the Buddha talked about to his friends. And actually, he talked about them according to the tradition all the way through his teaching life for the next, 45 years of his life. He communicated these truths in different ways to different people. And in a way, we ourselves also have little glimpses of truth. I think it's really important to realize that. We all have moments where we see things a little bit more clearly, where we have a vision that feels like it's more true, that feels like it's more real. It might also feel like it's there's something good about it. You know, there's something kind of wholesome, morally good about it. So this, for us, might come from an experience of personal tragedy, where we lose everything and we have to start again. It's funny, I was talking to someone recently who was not in a very good place in his life, and everything was kind of falling apart. And interestingly, he said to me, he said, there's a weird kind of freedom in it. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I've noticed that sometimes, that when I feel like my whole life's falling to bits, strangely, I feel a sense of freedom because I'm shedding things which have been holding me down. So personal tragedy, strangely, can give a glimpse. It might, for example, just give us a glimpse into the fact that tragedy is just an unavoidable element of human experience. It's not the only element, but that we experience it, other people experience it as well. So it may be the cause of a sense of empathy with others, a sense of connection with others. Sometimes people have spontaneous mystical experiences. So you might have had, I mean, it's a bit of a vague term, mystical, but you know, sometimes people do have experiences, more commonly than you think actually, where they just see things in a completely altered kind of way and in a truer kind of way. Someone that I know quite well, for example, was telling me years and years ago, before she got involved in Buddhism, that the way she expressed it was that she saw the whole of the love of God in a drop of water on the side of the bathtub. A strange sort of experience of, in a way, the inextricably interlinked nature of things, and that kind of led her on a quest that took her to Buddhism eventually. People often talk about these kinds of experiences when they encounter death and come back from that experience. I read a book once which was a whole account of near-death experiences, that they experience something which enlarges their perspective on life, and they come back from that experience changed. These kind of glimpses of a vision of something true can also happen through like the arts, even looking at a painting. Sometimes when we look at art, it's as if the sensibility that the artist is expressing through the way they apply the paint on the canvas rubs off on us in some way, and we start seeing things a little bit more the way that he or she saw them. I don't know if you've had this experience. Not everyone's into looking at art. I have my moments where I kind of feel like I've gotten somewhere with it. Other times that I find it baffling. But I have had experiences where I've just come out of an art gallery with just a slightly different perspective, a slightly enlivened kind of perspective. I think for me, more striking is actually sometimes films that I've seen or theatre that I've seen where something about the nature of life, the nature of the lives that we live is just being communicated, and it sort of rubs off on me. It gives a glimpse of something that's more true. Now, no doubt, these other examples, and music, or even being in nature. Just where sometimes when you're out in nature, and it's just as if the mind stops, and you're just completely present in that environment without having a separate sense of you being the person who's having that experience. There's just experience unfolding. Similarly, for some people, these glimpses arrive through thought or reflection, maybe through reading. Um, I quite like just reading and sort of thinking about what I'm reading. It's one of the things I like about going away on a solitary retreat, just being able to really get into a book and really just think about what the author is saying and let that kind of rub off of me. And sometimes my own thoughts are kind of awoken or ignited by the stimulation from what I'm reading. So thoughts or reflections can provide or create the conditions for awakening up to things as they really are. Or maybe through meditation. I'm sure some of you, I know there's quite a few familiar faces on this course, people who I know have meditated. And yes, through meditation, again, you can have a sense of things where it's just more apparent that, for example, things are changing, and we're all right with that. Maybe just for a moment. Maybe just for a moment, we know that everything changes, and we're all right with that, just for a moment. And then maybe what happens is the usual mind kind of kicks in. So I'm sure we've all had a moment like this, or moments in our lives. Now, the tragedy is that often we forget them. We see things a little bit more clearly, and then it passes and we just go on with living our lives in the normal way. So what I wanted to do this evening is just spend a little bit of time just dwelling on those moments in our own life, in your life. Those little moments where you've seen things a little bit more clearly, when something's kind of opened out for you. I'm not asking for something kind of earth-shattering, although it might have been earth-shattering. But just little moments in your life where things have just come clear to you, where there's been a sense of things being a bit more true, a sense of you knowing your kind of place in the world. Even if it was just for a moment, just a second. So, yeah, what I want to do is I'm just going to stop talking for a couple of minutes and just give you a moment to just reflect on that. So when have you in your life had a glimpse of truth? And it could have been in one of the ways that I mentioned, or in another way. And like I said, it doesn't have to be something earth-shattering, although it may be. So I'll just give you, like I say, a couple of minutes. I'll stop talking and just give you a moment to reflect on that. Okay. So what we're going to do now is move into our breakout rooms. So Kevin's set them all going, and you'll get a chance to meet a few of the other people on the course, and we'll be in the same groups each week. So you'll actually need to do something here to facilitate this. So tonight we've put you all into groups, so you don't need to do anything except just join a group. Next week you'll have to choose the group that you're in. So what that means is you'll have to remember the name of the person who's leading the group that you're in, or they've also got an emblem, like one person's got a shamrock, another person's got a sunflower, somebody else has got a precious metal. Yeah, so you just need to remember either the name or the precious substance or the flower or both. Yeah. So that's a little memory test for you. Yeah, we'll be in there for about 18 minutes. And so it'll give every person about 2 or 3 minutes to speak. And Kevin, are you all right to give people a little shout out about halfway through, just so we've got a sense of the time passing? Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, cool. And yeah, so what I suggest you talk about is I'm just going to share a screen with you here. So yeah, so just basically, just to say your name first of all. It's a good place to start. And then why did you decide to do this course? So that should say do, not so. Why did you decide to do this course? And secondly, what has a glimpse of truth been for you? So what were you just reflecting about? Now that might be personal. You might not want to share it, but it'd be lovely if you did, just to remind yourself of the highest moments of your life, and just to share that with the other people as a way of connecting with this this path of vision that we're going to be exploring. Yeah. So why did you decide to do this course, and what has a glimpse of the truth been for you? And yeah, after the group, we'll come back into the main room and I'll just say a couple of things and then we'll have a break. So if you could set those going now, Kevin, that would be fantastic. So yeah, welcome back if you're here, if you just come back after the break. What we're actually going to do is we're going to do a little bit of meditation. It won't be a long meditation this evening. So what I suggest you do is just sit comfortably. If you've got meditation questions, you might like to set them up, but don't spend a long time because we're not going to be meditating. We're going to be meditating for about 20 minutes. So just sit in a way that you're going to be comfortable for the next 20 minutes, and then we'll make a start. So beginning by just getting a sense of what's around you. and your experience of your own body. Feeling the contact that you're making with what you're sitting on. And just relax into yourself. So being curious about what your mind feels like right now. And when I say mind, I mean emotions as well as thoughts. So earlier we were talking about glimpses of truth. For some people, that might have been a glimpse of beauty or a sense of stillness. So just calling that to mind, that moment, that glimpse. Not just the memory of it, but what was the atmosphere? How did your mind, how did your heart feel when you had that experience? So you won't be able to recapture the experience, but you might be able to connect with the feeling of it, the atmosphere of it, what it meant to you. So that glimpse suggests that there's more to the mind, more to your experience of life than we normally connect with. So we, as it were, let that experience permeate our mind, our experience. As we begin to pay attention to what happens in our body when we breathe. So attending to the movements that take place, particularly in our belly as we breathe in and out. And if the mind wanders away from the breathing, from the sensations of breathing, we just come back. So not being too forceful on the one hand or too loose on the other. And to help us connect, to help us string awareness of our breathing into a continuum, we're going to place a count at the end of the out breath. So we breathe in, we breathe out in our natural rhythm. Count 1. Breathe in and out in our natural rhythm. 2. In and out, just in your natural rhythm. 3. And keep counting in that way until you've counted 10 cycles of breathing. And then we just return again to 1. And anytime you get distracted, you notice that you've wandered off, you don't know what number you're up to, just reconnect with your breathing and start again at 1. So now moving into a second part of the practice, placing the count just before the in-breath. So we count 1 and we breathe in and out in our natural rhythm. 2, in and out, and so on. being sensitive to the breathing in our body, sensitive to the energy entering our body. And now letting go of the counting and just being with your breathing. And then just sitting. So letting go of a particular focus and just sit. So hopefully you noticed that just by bringing to mind whatever it is that you spoke about earlier before the meditation, it had some kind of an impact, some kind of an influence, some kind of a perfuming of the practice that you just did. I'll return to that when we look at our home practice later, but that was the kind of purpose of that, just to notice how the way that we enter into meditation, the kind of frame that we give it, has some influence on the kind of experience that we have when we do it. I was talking earlier about this vision that the Buddha tried to communicate to his 5 friends of the 4 truths. And I just wanted to return to that and make the point that the Buddha didn't just communicate in terms of concepts. The Buddha also communicated in terms of images. So very often in the Buddhist tradition, if you look at the actual texts of the Buddha speaking, the records that we have of the Buddha speaking, he often spoke conceptually and spoke in terms of images. Often they were quite commonplace images in terms of the sorts of things that people would have seen in a pre-industrial society. Lakes, lotuses, plows, and so on. So I'm just going to share a few screens here with you. So we heard earlier about the 4 truths: the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, which is craving. And in the Buddhist tradition, that's given expression to in terms of the image of a wheel, the image of going around and around in circles in a kind of habit or a repetitive cycle. So this is an image of that kind, an image of what's called the wheel of becoming. So it's an image of how we, through our actions, just bind ourselves to a particularly restrictive way of being, which is what that kind of dependent relationship between suffering and craving is talking about. So that's the image of the wheel of life. There's more information about this in the book, which you can read up on. I haven't really got time to go into the ins and outs of it, but I just wanted to show you that image because it's quite expressive, I think, the idea of being stuck on a wheel, a little bit like a hamster. And I'm sure sometimes that's the way, it's certainly the way I feel sometimes, that I'm just stuck in this restriction because of my own habits, because of my particular ways of doing things. So that's the image that corresponds to the first truths, the first 2 truths. And then, of course, there's the 3rd truth, which is the ending of suffering, which is awakening, which is enlightenment. And we see that as the Buddha. Yeah. So again, the Buddha wouldn't have needed to communicate that image because he himself embodied it. But for many of us, just the image of the Buddha, seeing him there completely still, completely whole, completely stable, completely balanced, sets off a resonance in us with that same potential within our own being. So that's the 3rd truth, not just the fact that the Buddha existed, but the fact that awakening exists as a possibility for any human being. And that image of the Buddha corresponds to the 3rd truth of the cessation of suffering, the ending of suffering, which, to put it positively, is freedom. Happiness, you could say. It's often said that in the Buddhist tradition that nirvana is the highest bliss. And the 4th truth is the truth of the path leading to the ending of suffering, and that is the Eightfold Path. That path is said to have 2 aspects. I'll talk about the 8 limbs in a moment just to give you the kind of sense of it, but that is the image of a path. I'm just getting a message there. Yeah, I'll give you the name of the book later, Marianne, thanks. The image of a path. So the image of, in a way, we don't literally walk along the path when we practice Buddhism, but metaphorically that's what we're doing. We tend to think as human beings in terms of, I'd like to do something, I'd like to get somewhere, and I need to get from here to there in order to do that. That's the way we think. So the Buddha, in a way, takes that up, he picks that up, in this image of the path to awakening. Yeah, so those three images, the image of the wheel, the image of the Buddha, and the image of the path, which as it were connects the wheel with the Buddha, are the three kind of central images in Buddhism that correspond to the Four Truths. So as we probably noticed when we spoke about the glimpses, is when we get these glimpses of truth or beauty, when we have a moment of stillness, we forget about it. In a way, that's the tragedy. So what Buddhism is concerned with, particularly this teaching of the Noble Eightfold Path, is having those glimpses, having those truer visions, those deeper visions of the reality of things, and then actually transforming our whole life in accordance with them, so that we don't forget them, so that they inform all the different aspects of our life. So the Buddhist path, the Eightfold Path, is separated into two stages. So first of all, you've got the path of vision, which is what I've been talking about this evening, and then the path of transformation. So the path of transformation, as I said, is concerned with allowing that vision to permeate through all the different aspects of our life, through all the different. Well, I'll tell you about what they are in a moment. So yeah, so in terms of the 8 different aspects, the 8 different limbs of the Eightfold Path, the first one is perfect vision. Yeah, so we try and establish this vision, this right way of understanding what's going on, this truer way of understanding what's going on. It's often spoken of in terms of the Four Truths, but really it can't be captured. It can't be forced into a particular conceptual or even an image. It's just an unmediated awareness, an unmediated perception of the reality of things. And that can arise spontaneously, and it can arise in dependence on conditions. And a big part of what Buddhism is creating those conditions, or creating the conditions where vision can arise. And then the path of transformation begins. So all of the other 7 limbs of the Eightfold Path pertain to the path of transformation. So the first limb is perfect emotion. Yeah. So basically, the idea is that it's one thing to have a vision, but emotions are what really move us. Yeah, our lives are the bodying forth of emotion. So unless we transform them, unless we find an emotional equivalent to the understanding that we've developed, nothing much is going to happen. Nothing much is going to change. So that path of transformation begins with emotion. And that's what we're going to be exploring. That's what we're going to be looking at next week. The third aspect is speech, which is acknowledging the fact that as human beings, one of the things that we do is we communicate with each other. It's one of the things that probably most of us do for most of our day is we communicate with other people. Most of us, our work will include communicating with other people, with friendships, as our family. All of these things involve communication. And there's different ways that we can do that. We can communicate according to what's true, or we can communicate less truly. Yeah, so we need to bring that as well into the under the influence, as it were, or in harmony with that vision of things that we've seen. Yeah, so that's the third limb, perfect speech. And the fourth aspect is perfect action. So this is bringing that vision into all of the ways that we act, not just what we say, but what we do, and even what we think. So some of you might be familiar with Buddhist ethics, a Buddhist precept. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the fourth week is action, perfect action. The fifth aspect is livelihood. So very often that gets left out of so-called spiritual teachings. But the idea here is that the kind of ethical and philosophical teachings of the Buddha aren't just something to be done on the weekends or in the evenings. It's something that is there to influence our whole life, and that includes our work. So on that fifth week, we'll be looking at our work and seeing what we can do just to bring some of the values, some of the practices even of Buddhism, of the Dharma, into our actual work, into what we do for a living. The sixth aspect is perfect effort. So, in a way, this is quite a general thing, and this is looking at our mental states. I mentioned earlier that, according to the Buddha, suffering arises in dependence upon our mental states, and liberation also arises in dependence upon our mental states. So, perfect effort is about working with our mental states ongoingly, and yeah, we'll look at what that means on the sixth week of the course. And the seventh week is about mindfulness. So mindfulness these days has almost become a thing in and of itself, but in the Buddhist tradition, it's very firmly housed or contained within the whole path. So we'll particularly be looking on that seventh week of the way that mindfulness is not just about developing awareness in the moment, but the way that mindfulness is about developing a continuity of purpose through all the activities, and how by doing that we develop a sense of individuality, a sense of ourselves as an integrated whole human being moving in a particular direction. Yeah, so that's very much the kind of the full Buddhist context of mindfulness. So we'll be looking at that in the seventh week. And then we'll round the whole lot off on week 8 by looking at perfect samadhi. So samadhi is often translated as meditation, but it means something deeper than that. It means something like the whole of our being in harmony, the whole of our being whole. So we'll find out what that means when we get there. So anyway, so that's just to give you a bit of a sense of the whole course, what we'll be looking at over the 8 weeks. And I really wanted to emphasize that what we're trying to do is develop that vision, reflect on truths like the four truths, reflect on impermanence, things like that, developing a vision, and then enabling a transformation to happen where that vision permeates through all the different aspects of our life. So Buddhism is, like I said, a path of the transformation of a mind that is confused and is in pain to a mind that is free. So it's quite a thoroughgoing path. It's quite a challenging path, but it does enable a genuine transformation to take place. And like I said, that's what we're going to be looking at by exploring these 8 limbs. And the limbs come together in this image of the 8-spoked wheel. So I found this online. It's from a museum. It's actually a Japanese image, and this is the symbol of Buddhism, really. And if you see a symbol of Buddhism, usually it'll be the 8-spoked wheel, and each of those 8 spokes represents one of the limbs of the Eightfold Path. So again, that's the Buddha using a commonplace image, the image of a wheel, to suggest something. So a wheel, of course, is a circle that suggests wholeness. That the wheel also in India is a symbol of the sun. It's also a symbol of sovereignty. It's quite a rich symbol. But yeah, the simplest sense of the wheel is that it contains the 8. It symbolizes the 8 limbs of the Eightfold Path. So I just wanted to give you that kind of an overview of the material, of the terrain that we're going to be covering, and also to place this idea of vision in its context. So in other words, the path of transformation is about bringing our whole life up to the level of our highest moments. That's what the different stages mean. So what I wanted to talk about now, just to say that next week we'll have more time for questions. I wanted to say that. So this week, in terms of the home practice, the first thing is there's 3 things I wanted to mention. So again, I'll just share a screen. Is first of all, meditation. I mentioned meditation as one of the limbs of the path. Meditation is one of the principal means of transformation. It's one of the principal means in the Buddhist tradition of how we transform ourselves. So what I would encourage you to do this week is, what do you need to do to intensify your meditation practice or revive your meditation practice? So sometimes, your meditation practice is up and running. Sometimes it's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit, and you need to kind of give it a bit of a kickstart. Some of you I know haven't meditated before, so I'll be sending you some material tomorrow about meditation and how to establish a practice. So that's the first item for home practice, is how to intensify or revive your meditation. So one of the key things I want to emphasize in terms of that is regularity. Yeah, so that's one of the key things to look at, is making sure that you're meditating regularly. That will be the thing that makes your meditation effective and helps you to keep it going. If it just becomes part of your day, if it becomes part of your routine, it'll develop its own momentum, which will carry you through, which will make the practice go deeper. So one of the key things to think about is just when you're going to do it. Yeah, so if you'd like to start up a meditation practice, if it's flagged and you'd like to restart it, just think about what time you're going to do it. What's the exact moment in the day that you're going to do it, and try and do it at the same time every day. Intensifying your meditation practice might be, let's say if you're meditating 4 times a week, you might like to meditate every single day, or 6 days out of the 7. It's obviously up to each of us to decide what we want to do, but it's an opportunity when you do a course like this to make an intention and to keep touching back in with it each week, and kind of monitoring how you're getting on with it. So intensifying your meditation might be making it more regular. It also might be making it a little bit longer. So maybe you're in the habit of meditating for half an hour. You might like to meditate for 40 minutes. The longer you're able to meditate, the deeper you can go into it. So again, what conditions will you need to put in place to make your meditation just a bit longer? So that's the first thing. So I'm just going to stop talking for a minute and just let you think about what you want to do with your meditation practice this week. Okay, so hopefully you've formulated an intention. You only need one thing really to be getting on with in terms of meditation. So the second thing is to start the meditation by bringing to mind a glimpse of perfect vision. Now you might have that might have worked for you earlier. It might not have worked for you as well, and that's fine as well. But it's just an opportunity that when you start to meditate, just to bring something to mind that's going to frame your meditation, that's going to bring an atmosphere of truth or beauty, even goodness to your practice. Yeah. So it might just, for example, one person in our group was talking about poetry and how they really responded to a particular retreat that we did years ago that was all about poetry. So, you might like to, if you respond to poetry, just, recite a poem before you start meditating, a poem that just gives that sense of some kind of value or truth or beauty, and carrying and perfuming your mind as you enter into the meditation in that kind of way. It might be an image. You might actually literally like to print out an image and have it on your wall where you meditate. That's another suggestion. The third thing I've written is I mean, this is a bit inelegantly put, but to follow up your glimpse. Yeah. So if it's poetry, you might like to, if there's a particular poet you like, you could follow them up. You could even buy a book online of one of their, I don't know, their collected poems or their selected poems, or you could I don't know. You get lots of different ways you could do it. It's so various depending on what touches you. Basically, we're all quite different in that respect. It might be. I mean, what came to mind when I thought of this is my first encounter with Buddhists was years ago in Wellington. I saw a talk by the Dalai Lama, and I'd never met a Buddhist before, and I was profoundly moved actually just by seeing by encountering a real Buddhist. So what I did is for the first for a few weeks after that, as I just sat there, kind of remembering that experience and the atmosphere, I found it profoundly moving. Now, when I started meditating, I came along to the Wellington Buddhist Centre where Don goes, and I started to meditate, and I kind of, in a way, forgot about that. I kind of pushed it to one side. So, in a way, I slightly regret that, but. In a way, so it's trying to kind of like connect our meditation practice in with what's most valuable to us. So those are the three things to practice this week. I'll send you an email reminding you about them tomorrow. Hopefully that's clear. Just to say we will have more time for questions in coming weeks. I just wanted to say just a couple of things just before we finish. So just to say that the Zoom link and the password and everything will be the same next week. And sometimes people wonder about, I said that there's no charge for the course. We're doing it on a donation basis. So I wanted to just give you some indication. Now, when we used to do these courses in person, an 8-week course would be €195 if you were waged, 165 for low waged, 125 if you're unwaged, or €80 if you're under 25. So that's just to give you a kind of a ballpark figure. But you're really free to give whatever you're happy to give. Yeah. So like I said, the course, there's no charge for the course. The donation is just you, if you want to, just helping us to keep doing what we're doing. Like I said, all the courses we're doing on a donation basis. But I did just want to say that because sometimes I think people find it helpful just to have an indication of some kind of a ballpark figure. And yeah, like I'm going to be here. We'll finish now for this week. But if you do have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask during the course of the evening, I'll be hanging around for about 10 or 15 minutes afterwards. So by all means, stick around, and if you've got questions, then I'll try and respond to them at that point. So other than that, I'll basically see you next week.